Are we streaming yet?
I have a stream, Chairman.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the North Somerset Council Executive Meeting of the 29th of July. I now have to do my airline announcement piece. So I would like to welcome everyone to this virtual meeting of the Executive. Before we move to the formal agenda, there are a few procedural and housekeeping issues to remind you of. This meeting is being held under the virtual meetings regulations using Microsoft Teams. Decisions made by the Executive will have the same standing of validity as if they'd been made at a physical meeting held at the Town Hall. We are streaming today's meeting live on the internet, and a recorded version will be available to viewers in 48 hours on the North Somerset Council website. Members of the public may see a number of different people on screen during the course of the meeting, but only members of the Executive will make the decision on each agenda item, and we will introduce ourselves in a few minutes. I will refer councillors to the meeting etiquette and guides using Teams as previously emailed to you all. Please remember to use your headphones. This will improve the sound quality for everyone, not least members of the public listening. Members of the Executive, please keep your video on during the meeting, but ensure your audio is muted when you are not speaking. When you wish to speak, would you please indicate this by using the chat function rather than the hand signal function? It's easy to monitor requests to speak from a single source, and Michelle Chessman will be monitoring that on my behalf. I will invite each of you to speak by way of a queue system. If you're leaving or return the meeting, would you please ensure that I'm aware of this by using the chat function? This is of particularly important with respect to any disposable pecuniary interest when you're not permitted to participate in an agenda item by law. You should immediately leave the meeting before the start of any debate on an item where you have a disposable pecuniary interest. A Democratic Services Officer will confirm when you have left or rejoined the meeting following determination of the agenda item. Non-executive members, would you please ensure that your audio is muted and your video is turned off when you are not speaking? Once you have spoken, please remember to mute your audio and turn off your video again. Please also use the chat function to indicate you wish to speak. Can I remind members that the chat function should only be used for the purposes of requesting to speak or associated matters and not for general chat. For any members joining the meeting by telephone, I will check whether you wish to speak before concluding the debate on the agenda items. Please could you also mute your phones when not speaking, as this will reduce background noise and interference. You can mute and unmute mobiles or landlines by pressing *6. If you use the *6 function on phones, that will mute and unmute mobiles and landlines. Voting. When proposing a motion, would you please indicate via the chat function you wish to speak and wait until I invite you to do so. Please then clearly state what you are moving, for example, the recommendation in the report. If you are seconding a motion, please again clearly indicate you wish to speak and wait for me to call you. Generally, voting at this meeting would in the reverse order and en bloc. That is, I will firstly request votes against the motion, then abstentions, then all other executive members in the meeting will be taken en bloc to vote for the motion. As chairman, if I determine there should be voting by roll call, the solicitor will call out each councillor by name in turn. Please state clearly if your vote is for the motion, against the motion, or abstain. Please remember to turn on your microphone when voting and to mute when you have spoken. This will ensure the vote is accurately recorded for more controversial matters and will enable members of the public to properly observe the vote. Before I move to the agenda, are there any questions from councillors? Can all members hear and see today's proceedings? Please ensure all mobiles are switched off. Thank you. So, Michelle, do we have any indications from the chat?
No questions in chat, Chairman.
Lovely, thank you. And now let's move on to the agenda proper. So item 1 is addresses by members of the public, of which there are none. Apologies for absence. We'll go on and introduce ourselves. So I am Don Davis. I'm the leader of the council, the chair of this meeting, and I will ask my colleagues in turn in alphabetical order. So Mike Bell.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mike Bell. I'm the Deputy Leader of the Council and the Executive Member for Adult Social Care and Health.
Mark Canniford.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Mark Canniford, and I'm the Executive Member for Business Economy and Employment.
Okay. Ashley Cartman.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Ashley Cartman, and I'm the Executive Member for Finance and Performance.
Caritas Charles.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Caritas Charles, and I'm the Executive Member for Culture, Leisure, Tourism and Community Engagement.
Okay, Catherine Gibbons.
Good afternoon, I'm Catherine Gibbons, and I'm the Executive Member for Children's Services and Lifelong Learning.
Okay. Bridget Petty, I believe, is absent, and we have received apologies. Is that correct, Sue?
That is correct, Chairman.
Sorry, she's not in the meeting.
Okay. I don't think we're expecting her. James Tonkin.
Good afternoon, I'm Councillor James Tonkin. I'm the Executive Member for Planning and Highways.
Lovely. So I think that's everybody. So we have one apology and 7 present. There are a large number of colleagues from the council on this call, and their names will be noted by the minute taker. So thank you.
Chairman,
Okay, now move on to item number 3, which is the declaration of disclosable pecuniary interest. Are there any? Have you received any, Michelle?
None in the chat, Chairman.
Lovely, thank you. And now we'll move on to item 4 of the agenda, which is COVID-19 financial impacts. I understand that Councillor Cartman is going to present this. Can I hand
Yes,
over
thank
to
you, Leader.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the report that is attached to the agenda is brought to you because it involves a change over 500,000, and indeed this report contains changes far in excess of that, which is the cumulative impact of the last 3 months under COVID. The annual budget that we set in February was £160 million, and this report identifies those cost pressures and loss of income that have created a gap of almost 30 million in the council budget on gross basis, which is equivalent to almost a 20% shortfall. So this report details how this shortfall arose, what we intend to do about it, and the financial risks we face now and indeed in the future. I won't go through the report in verbatim, but just as a summary, in terms of income, we've had, in terms of the deficit, we've had £10 million worth of additional spending. We've lost £7.4 million of income. There are £1 million worth of savings that we were budgeted to do, but we were unable to deliver due to resource. We have an £8.3 million deficit on our council tax and business rate collection fund. And there also, in addition to that, there are non-COVID cost pressures of approximately £2 million. This gives us a gross financial gap of £28.7 million, indeed a significant gap. This gap has been reduced to a potential of £5.1 million, as can be seen in the report, by £11.9 million of government funding from central government, a collection fund adjustment that defers that pressure to future years, an additional £2.8 million worth of savings as detailed in the report, and utilising £750,000 worth of general reserves. There was an announcement earlier in July from the government about the 3rd tranche of government funding, and we estimate it may yield the remaining £5 million that we require to balance the budget for the current financial year. Although in no way is this in time to celebrate balancing the budget, we still face substantial in-year risks and severe medium-term financial challenges. With respect to risks, I would respectively draw Executive Member and Councillors' attentions to pages 10 to 12 of the report, which identify those risks that we continue to monitor, risks for which, if they manifest, their financial impacts are not contained within these financial figures. And I will give examples of 2. Firstly, early modelling of home to school transport to take account of social distancing indicates that these costs could be additional £1.5 million. Secondly, our commercial investments, which have performed up to March in line with expectations in North Wales and the Sovereign Centre, and continue to not have any losses against them, but we have deferred some of the rental payments from our tenants. Obviously, the retail high street is changing substantially, and we are exposed to a certain level of risk there, which we are monitoring. But I think probably the most concerning is the medium-term outlook for the council. Page 12 gives details the £26.2 million shortfall, which includes £11.6 million next year over the next 3 years. This has been massively exacerbated by the collection fund deficit of £8.3 million in the current year, which should be spread over the next 3 years, which we are anticipating, which is very much kicking the ball down the path. I appreciate this is a lot of information in this report to take in, and I would recommend that members, if they have any further questions after this, please do approach me or some of the officers. But if there are 3 things to remember, it would be these: that our extra costs and income losses have opened a £28.8 million gap in our annual budget. And although central government funding is very welcome and is very substantial, it is not enough. Secondly, we face a significant problem next year, which has been made worse by government action or lack of action. And third, we continue to face a great deal of uncertainty and risk within these numbers, which means we may have to come back later in the year with further amendments and changes. When I finish shortly, I will be asking the officer, the Section 151 officer, Richard Pensker, if he'd like to make any further comments. But before that, I'd like to thank the finance team for preparing this report, and indeed, not just that, but council staff as well for their continued work and dedication. Much is rightly said of all the work our NHS staff and workers do, but we mustn't forget anyway that the support that our officers and staff provide to our community is exemplary and needs to be noted. So finally, before I ask Richard for comment, I would like to propose that the executive approves this report, including the recommendations contained therein. Thank you, Leader.
Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. So thank you for that introduction. So it doesn't really need me to go through any further on the report. I would probably just emphasise the point around future years. So you will see from the table in 3.9 that our gap of 19 million has grown substantially as we all have to accommodate within that the sort of 8.3 or the share of the 8.3 collection fund loss that we're estimating across council tax and business rates. What I would say is that we continue to lobby government on these positions, not only on our future years and how they might support us in dealing with that pressure, but also in dealing with current position in years. So this is, as Councillor Carpenter says, a point in time. Some of those risks that have been identified may come to pass. So we will see this move. So we'll bring another report in September, exec, which will give you a current up-to-date position of where we are in year, but it'll also restate the sort of 21-22 onwards position, looking at base assumptions and seeing what other announcements we've had from government that may help or not against that position. I mean, one of the key positions we're lobbying on is the sustainability of supporting adult social care. So our financial modelling at the moment indicates a level of support which is not sustainable without further government support. So we continue to lobby on a number of areas, also in leisure as well. So we have a number of things that we're trying to support and continue services within the council, but we are challenged around their affordability. Whereas this is indicating a balanced position in view of the government support we now know we will receive, that it is a moving feast, and we just have to watch these risks as they materialise and see what future government support we get to deal with those. So as I say, we'll bring a further report on the 9th of September. That will also detail what we're going to do around our MTFP and transformation process and public engagement around how we set our budget for 21-22 onwards, and then we'd be looking to bring a more detailed report on the 21st of October. But happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Richard, and thanks, Ash, for the detailed response. And there's far more detail beyond that within the papers, isn't there? And I think I would like to put on record, I'm sure, on behalf of every councillor here, that our thanks to our teams over the last several months of this whole pandemic process. I mean, the amount of work everybody has done has been amazing, and the things we've achieved, I think, have just been absolutely wonderful in terms of taking things forward as quickly as we've done. So I think we all owe a massive debt of gratitude to our staff and the volunteer and groups and the contractors that have been working with us. So thank you very much for all you've done for us. And I also think that both Ash Cartman and Richard Pensker have highlighted the massive challenges ahead. And there is lobbying going on. I was on 2 meetings this morning, which there was yet more lobbying in terms of funding, but everything is just so uncertain. And we, unlike other government departments, have to set a balanced budget, and the challenges for this year and then again for next year are quite difficult. I think would be a massive understatement. So I was going to ask, first of all, are there any officers who wish to further comment in relation to this piece? And I was going to throw it open to non-executive members, then executive members. Michelle, any officers wish to speak?
No officers requested to speak. Councillor Richardson has requested as non-executive.
Okay, so if you could, so Councillor Richardson, please, Jeff Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to comment on the remaining risks, which are in section 3.8. It looks to me like several of those risks aren't actually risks at all. They're actually things we know are going to happen. So I'm wondering why we haven't included those in our numbers. Plus, there are other things that might be included, like overspend on major projects like Portishead Rail Link and HIF. And I'd like to know whether we checked any of our other contracts to see whether our contractees could pass costs on to us. So, Richard, I guess that's for you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. So let's deal with the last question first. So what this report doesn't identify is the capital pressures. So I'd expect to bring that report to you in September. Some of those are long stated, so you'll appreciate the capital programme this year, 99 million. There'll be a degree of slippage around that, so we may not see in our overall estimates of spend that the COVID pressure surfaces as a capital pressure in year. But I would certainly bring back a more detailed report on that work we're going on. So just to give you some idea that we have indications from a number of contracts or contractors that they've experiencing additional costs because of COVID, but they've not made a formal claim. So albeit we can see the risk, I can't quantify it as yet, and therefore it's quite difficult to put into a report. But I would expect to be bringing that to you in September. But you are right. Even some of the long dated projects we've got, so whether that's HIF or Metro West, a sort of 6-month delay now because of COVID will create an inflationary pressure, into 23, 24. So we do need to quantify all that, and I'm quite happy to present that in September. And probably that's my commentary I'll take into your first question. So I do think those risks are not quantified yet, and because they're not quantified, they've not put in. So, the home to school transport risk will depend on DFT and DFE guidance, which we are yet to have. So again, in September, I think we should be in a better position to put a number to that, and then at that point, I would look to bring it into the report. So I think the risks are worthy of note, and they are there for a reason. But because I can't quantify them yet, they've just not been brought into the financial modelling. Okay, thanks, Richard.
I think that's a fair thing to say, Richard. I'm the executive member responsible for home to school transport. I've just come off a briefing with officers around that, and and we're still waiting for guidance from central government, and that is changing almost by the day in terms of what the expectations are around social distancing on transport. So I think it's extremely hard to put numbers in other than address those risks, and I think this paper does make that very clear. Michelle, does anybody else wish to speak?
Councillor Bridger, Councillor Westwood, Councillor Bell and Councillor Gibbons. Chair.
Councillor Bridger and Councillor Westwood, did you say?
Yes, Chair.
And then Councillor Bell and Councillor Gibbons. Lovely, thank you.
Bell and Councillor Gibbons.
Okay, so we'll go to the non-executive members first. Councillor Bridger? Could I also
thank you,
ask,
Chair.
before you start speaking, Steve, could I ask, to avoid confusion, could I ask non-executive members who aren't speaking to take their video off, please? I can see at least one who's on my screen who I think it would have been better if they would just to avoid any confusion. Sorry, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, this is very brief. It's a quick question, really. Are we likely to need, do you think, to bring a revised budget to full council within a year?
Yeah.
Ash, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so within the recommendations, Steve, there's a couple of items there that actually do need to go to full council. So a version of this will go to full council. I can't remember when the next council meeting is. I imagine sometime in September. So yes, and then in terms of if there's going to be significant changes, well, I think that depends on the risks in the report. So and the size of that is the answer to that. So my expectation is there will be further changes. Whether it's big enough to go to council or not, in addition to what's stipulated here, I don't know.
Thanks, Ash.
Richard Westwood.
Thanks, Don. I'm very pleased to see that we appear to be very much on the front foot as far as relations with central government are concerned. From my membership of the Audit Committee, it's clear that North Somerset Council is, how shall I put it, one of the middle parts of fortune as far as local authorities are concerned. There are many in a more perilous position than us, and basically, we really do need to hang together on this one as local authorities, or we will assuredly hang separately. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other non-exec members who wish to speak? Michelle, please.
Chairman, it's Nick Braden. There's nothing showing in chat other than the ones you currently have.
Okay, so Councillor Mike Bell.
Thank you, Don. I just wanted to make two observations. I totally echo both Don and Ash's comments of thanks to officers and a great tribute to the work that everyone has done across the council. And I just wanted to comment on two things that are critical in terms of our thinking around our current financial position. The first one, which Ash mentioned, is around adult social care. We can see that £7.5 million worth of our COVID related costs, so by far and away the biggest chunk of it, have been related to additional support for adult social care provision. And indeed, the lion's share of the unring-fenced money that government has provided to North Somerset has been spent in support of adult social care providers. But of course, when we know that we've had enormous pressures on adult social care over many years anyway, this really is very much a temporary solution. It's likely that our adult social care costs will continue, not just for the rest of this financial year, but potentially into next year too. And that's before we've even got into the usual round of winter pressures and any possible risk of a second wave of COVID outbreaks. So the adult social care situation remains extremely grave, and the government really does need to pull its finger out and move forward with some long-term sustainable proposals. We continue to be stuck in this vicious circle where we get one-off sums of additional money for adult social care, We've got no basis to plan for the longer term. We don't know what that's going to look like in terms of planning our medium-term financial plan. And it does mean that we're in an extremely difficult position with our hands tied behind our backs, really, in terms of that longer-term planning. So absolutely critical that we get that one sorted. And we know that the government has pledged to try and address this during the autumn statement and spending review later this year. And the second thing I wanted to mention was that the other thing, of course, that's critical is the role that North Somerset Council has to play in leading the place locally to help drive the recovery from COVID and to help get our economy back on the right track and to cement some of the good things that have happened during COVID-19, things like North Somerset Together, but also some of the new ways of working and opportunities to promote more outdoor eating and cycling and sustainable forms of transport. But of course, the big gap at the moment from government is some funding to help us do that. You can see, looking through this budget report, that we do not have the flexibility to invest and kickstart some of these projects that we would like to take forward. And it's really vital that the government doesn't just talk the talk nationally, but actually delivers some additional funding so that we can make a difference locally and help our economy recover.
Thank you, Mike. That's very, very wise words in terms of the challenges facing us, and on top of the budget challenges and the expectations from our residents, that we are looking to the future as well as dealing with the current pressures. Catherine Gibbons indicates she wanted to speak.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to make a similar point to Councillor Bell. Yeah, we all face enormous pressures, particularly in children's services. We don't know, we have statutory obligations, we don't know precisely what pressures are going to come down the line. And like Councillor Bell, I wanted to make the point that it seems like we've come a very long way from the time when the government was saying to local authorities, spend whatever it takes because we're here for you. And we've done that because we have to for the sake of our residents. And yet at some point, subtly, the mood changed. And I think I remember saying to Councillor Cartman at a former meeting, was he aware of this subtle change in not having your back and spending whatever you want? And we have come from that point to this stage where we are getting dribs and drabs of money as and when, and it makes it very, very hard for us to plan well to deliver the services to our residents. So I suppose my, not complaint exactly, is that I, like Councillor Bell, I think the government needs to do much, much more, but to reassure residents that we as an administration and our officers are lobbying government very, very hard on their behalf. And I wanted to ask Councillor Cartman how confident he is that we are all being listened to by the government.
Not confident at all, really. I think this government, it seems to be too little, too late, or complete knee-jerk reaction to things, and that's a sad state of affairs to be in. And that, the issues that you and Councillor Bell have outlined are, issues to do with local government that have been made worse over the last 10, 15, 20 years, really. And it seems to feel at the moment that they are increasingly looking to ring-fence money and control money from the centre. And they fail to understand that local people understand best what is needed for local needs. And it seems to be constantly approaching with a begging bowl. And I know our officers do a marvellous job of linking in with wider organisations, the LGA and other forums, to lobby on our behalf. But fundamentally, it still comes back to the fact that we are queuing up to beg for money for our residents when they are suffering. And it's atrocious that we should be in that, and why they can't do more sooner, is my view on it. I don't know if anyone else has got a view on the executive who perhaps is involved in more lobbying than I am, but like you said, they are rowing back very quickly, and my worry is that we will see more of the austerity as they start to talk about balanced budgets. And yet, my final point is the consensus seems to be outside of politicians in government that we need to move past that. It's not, this is not no longer radicalism. It's sensible that they should be spending.
Absolutely.
I would agree with your summary in terms of the the lobbying. I mean, I'm involved in an awful lot of leaders' calls. I'm sure you are within your own executive functions, in which money clearly is a big issue. On a conversation with the LGA today, and and again, funding is there. I think that our own MHCLG is reasonably aware of the situation, and conversations with ministers there seem to indicate it's well understood the problems. But then it comes to what the Treasury wants to do, and we are then very much waiting for them to decide how to move forward. And I think the sad thing, of course, is we have a government which has almost deliberately taken away things from central government for 10 years, and that is now realising that actually, when we have a national crisis, that local government is actually a very efficient way of delivering services and keeping people safe. But of course, then it relies on the fact that we're allowed to make decisions locally as opposed to at the centre. We are about the most centralised country in Europe in terms of decision making, and it's very frustrating for an area like this, like the west of England, which is a net contributor to national coffers, and probably think one of the few regions of than the Greater London area. Yet we're almost having to ask for our own money back, aren't we? Which it makes it even more frustrating that we're rating on somebody up in Whitehall to say, well, you can have your own money back when we're in dire need, and it's not us in need. Let's be honest. It's not the council isn't in need. It's the people, the residents, and the businesses of North Somerset that are in need. We are the conduit to supply those services to them. So I think this idea, it's the council, it's the people that are suffering, and the businesses that are suffering as a result of this indecision. And promises made and then promises not kept. I'm going to get off my soapbox now because it beats health and safety regulations. I think I've got Hazel. Hazel Brinton is now in my master of ceremonies. Hazel, did anybody else wish to speak?
That's correct, Chairman. Yes, we have Councillor Caniford, followed by Councillor Charles. Okay,
so Mark Caniford, please.
Thank you, Don. I just wanted to highlight and also discuss, or not discuss, the recovery and renewal part of our budget here. And I think it's really important, even though we are under huge pressures, quite clearly not of our own, it's important to highlight the fact that officers get it. They get the fact that our recovery through business is so very, very important, and they have made huge strides in terms of things they have already done with the very limited resources they have had. And I just want to thank officers for the things they've already done. They are noticeable. People are talking about them, and the value that officers are getting through these improvements to our economy are great. Now, in terms of the support, we are supporting businesses, and the council are really working hard and going beyond what they would normally do to support anyone who needs help 7 days a week. And I think they just need to be thanked for that level of commitment to our business sector in North Somerset. And the fact is, and I just wanted to highlight the fact that we are still spending money on the things that businesses and the economy and residents need. We have just had an awful lot of money taken off us for other things, and that's why we are in this position. But we will continue to support businesses, and I did want that to be highlighted, and not the fact that everything is going down the drain. The government has made it very, very tough, and people remember the actions they have taken over time, because you only got to listen on nearly all media sites to see that there is dissatisfaction from top to bottom of country of how this has been handled.
Okay, Councillor Caritas Charles.
I just wanted to, it's a quick point to reaffirm what my colleagues have said, but also when we look towards recovery and we look towards coming out of this, that we have experienced a fundamental change and we do have challenges to come. We have challenges to our leisure services sector that the government isn't properly addressing at the moment and looking at. We have challenges to our cultural sector that the government isn't addressing properly and looking at. And what I really do hope as the months go on is that we don't slip into our old political ideologies and that we look for radical reforming solutions to these problems. Other European countries are doing this, looking at areas such as universal basic income and how we as a country can rebuild but also reform as well. I think the appetite is here in the authority for that, and I think the appetite is in the country for that as well. We can't just go back to normal. We have to be better than when we went into this.
Thank you. Yes, for everything that anybody has had to put up with in this suffered, I think there needs to be a positive outcome. So, is there anybody else, Hazel?
No further requests, Chairman.
Okay, lovely. So we have in front of us recommendations in the papers. Recommendation 1, which is split into 9 parts, and recommendation 2. I was going to ask Nick Brain if we can take those en bloc.
Chairman, yes.
Okay. So are there any members of the executive who wish to vote against? Are there any abstentions? Hazel, have you seen anybody either of those?
No messages regarding either of those in chat, Chairman.
Lovely. Okay, so I will take it that you, colleagues, that you're unanimously in favour of the recommendations on this paper. So thank you very much, and I'll move on to the next item.
Thank you, colleagues.
Which I'll give me just a few moments to do because I am on a laptop here. So this is item number 5, I think, which is the corporate plan and recovery. Now, I mean, the corporate plan was alluded to in the previous item. We introduced a new corporate plan in 2019, an open, fair, green and North Somerset, and we're absolutely, as an executive, completely committed to those goals, and as set out in the corporate plan. But I think with the COVID-19 pandemic, it is very, very sensible to review the plan and its objectives in relation to the response, recovery and renewal of that plan and our corporate aims and how we're going to do that. And the paper in front of you sets out how we're going to do that. And in the more details, in Appendix 1 is the high-level approach to using our corporate ideals, and the proposed changes to the plan are in Appendix 2. As you have them, I wasn't going to read them out or detail them. I think it's a very prudent piece of work to do to make these amendments necessary, and very much to say that we are on track with our plans, with 1 or 2 very, very minor amendments as listed. I think the one on the Portishead rail line has slipped back very slightly. But other than that, our commitments within the length of this administration. John Wilkinson, I know, has worked very hard on this, and I don't know if John wants to make any comments before I throw this open to questions.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, just to add, I think members have already made the connection between the financial challenges you've just been talking about and the recovery and renewal side of things. And it's obviously very good practice, best practice for us to consider our strategic plans and our ambitions for the area alongside financial plans, which is what members did when the corporate plan was adopted and the budget agreed in February. So it's timely to bring this forward to the extraordinary meeting. I'd just add on the 2-page document, response, recovery and renewal, that's deliberately intended to be a very short overview, a concise document, not the normal kind of lengthy strategies that we sometimes write in the council, so that it can be a genuinely live document and updated in response to feedback that we get from residents and partners. It's also very important that document doesn't compete with the corporate plan. It complements it and reasserts the vision as the leader just mentioned. And the only other thing I wanted to say is that it tries to pick up on some of the opportunities that members have mentioned around things like community engagement, climate, digital, and so on. Because although the pandemic has certainly made some things much harder for us to deliver, it does bring some new opportunities. But those are new opportunities which we need to actively seize. They don't happen just by themselves. So I think it's very important that we strengthen the corporate plan by adding this extra document and by making the relatively minor additions and updates that are proposed in Appendix 2.
Thank you, John. Chairman. Yes, thank you. And I think you make two very good points. So one is around the wonderful work that North Somerset together and our wider communities have demonstrated over the last 6 months, and I think that's just been a wonderful piece of work, and we do need to capitalise on all that community engagement and community support. And I think the other thing is just to say that by making these amendments, we are actually saying this is a genuine plan which we are working to. It isn't just a document we've done to tick a box. We've done it because we wouldn't be worried about changing it. So I think the fact we've demonstrated the importance of keeping this document valid and up to date in terms of the pandemic impacts as well, I think is very useful. So thank you very much, John, for you and your team for the work that's gone into this. Are there any other comments from officers on this one? Okay. Hazel, are there any non-executive members who wish to make comments?
No non-executive members have requested to speak in chat, Chairman.
Okay. Are there any of my executive colleagues who wish to comment?
Yes, Councillor Caniford would.
Okay, Mark Caniford, please.
Thank you again, Don. Yes, I just wanted to highlight up one issue which I know will come to me, and I want to give support to the decision that we're making here and some clarity to it, and that is striking through the meanwhile use project, simply due to that. And I wanted people to realise that isn't disappearing, in the sense that we are just going to look at different ways to achieve that. So through the placemaking strategy that we choose, and in discussions with other councils, how we can actively seek interventions by landlords to try and understand how they are going to fill their space, and to very much understand that the rents that they would have been collecting in previous years are and will simply not be achievable in the future years. So I just want anyone who is concerned that we are giving up on this idea of trying to let our high street and high streets properties, it hasn't been given up, but we are just trying to achieve it in other ways.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Did anybody else wish to speak, Hazel?
Yes, we've had a request from non-exec member Councillor Haverson, followed by Councillor Gibbons.
Okay, Karen Haverson.
Thank you. Yes, I was a bit slow asking to speak, sorry. Just quite a specific request. I'd like to ask that in advance of the government's forthcoming Warm Homes grant scheme, North Somerset Council should use officer time and council resources to research and explore this, how best to promote it and other related schemes, and thus offering encouragement and advice to residents so they can apply, with the aim of maximising the number of our residents receiving these vouchers which have been promised, and with a special focus on home with the worst EPC rating to maximise the benefit. In that way, it would tick all our boxes and help to encourage a greener and fairer North Somerset. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, for that question. I mean, you very kindly let me know that you were going to ask it. So I think that the situation is, as you say, is that the guidance on the scheme has still not been released, because often they say the devil is in the detail of what comes forward. But I think I've spoken with officers, and the suggestion is that we engage with a built environment working group to make a comms plan to widely promote this. And I've also highlighted it to the person, Nikki Webb, who's leading up on the climate emergency as well. So we are aware of it, Karen. Thanks for raising this, and I think that's probably the best way forward. But still, please keep reminding us, especially once the full details come out, to make sure that we have we're fully on board with taking it forward, and nothing else has derailed us. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Catherine Gibbons.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a brief sort of thanks to North Somerset Together. I was on a call today with all the leads of the various mutual aid groups across North Somerset, as I think Councillor Bridger and a couple of others were. And it's highlighted such a lot within our communities. That's good. It's also alerted us to the fact that there is more digital exclusion than we perhaps might have realised prior to this crisis, which is something that we look to address across the district. But what it's shown is that there is so much talent out there in our communities, so many abilities that haven't been recognised perhaps up till now, and that's something we have to take on board as we develop our strategies, particularly our skills and our employment strategies, to take note of the fact that there are people that have been brought into this voluntary exercise who perhaps prior to this thought they didn't have much to offer, let's say. You know, they'd been at home a lot, they'd been far from employment, and yet this crisis has shown us that everybody can do something in their community and can be valued, and I think that's hugely important, and I hope that we will be able to harness that and continue with it as we come out of this crisis and go on into recovery. We are working hard on a new skills strategy, and I know Councillor Canaford is working with communities, with businesses and with other organisations on an employment strategy. So we're working hard. That's all I wanted to highlight, and to thank everyone who has helped.
Thank you. Is there anybody else, Hazel?
Yes, non-executive member Councillor Westwood would like to speak, Chairman.
Thank you. Richard Westwood.
Hi, Chairman, and everybody else. Just to say, I'm very pleased that the Appendix 2 to the corporate plan still includes the 2 cycle routes, both of which cross in my ward. So I would very much hope that we do get the Strawberry Line to Clevedon and the coastal cycle route coming together in Clevedon. There you go. It's just what we need, basically, and it's something that we should be very much pushing for. I understand that there was some possibility, or the government at one stage quite recently were asking for capital spending projects, and I must admit I did put forward that the Strawberry Line to Clevedon should be something that we're actively pushing for. It would be an excellent use of a packet of money. Thank you very much.
You're very careful what you wish for, Richard. You might get Boris Johnson down to open it on his new bike.
Indeed.
I'm sure you'll be welcomed with open arms.
Absolutely.
Well, not, of course, in a virtual distancing way.
Indeed. Absolutely, okay. Chairman. Yes.
So, Hazel, do we have anybody else that wishes to speak? So I was going to go to the vote.
No further request, Chairman.
Okay, so we have the recommendations in front of us. Are we happy to do them en bloc? Okay, so is there anybody against? Are there any abstentions?
Nothing in chat for either of those, Chairman.
Okay, so I take it, colleagues, thank you unanimously supporting that. And now I move on to the next item 7, which I think James Tonkin is going to introduce.
Thank you, Chairman. May I first of all take the opportunity to thank Jonathan Perisel-Neris and Alex Fear for bringing this report to the Executive, a summary of which is as follows. On the 16th of June, Council accepted the funding and agreed to increase the capital programme subject to the grant determination agreement being agreed by the Executive. If agreed today, then the GDA will be signed by North Somerset Council and Homes England in early August, which will enable the Council to draw down immediately on £20 million worth of development funding, with the rest of the Housing Infrastructure Fund grant availability for construction later in the programme. There has been no substantive changes to the key clauses or conditions of the GDA that presented to Council or SPEDA at the previous meetings. The GDA is attached as an exempt item. The report also notes the key project management principles by which the Council team and its suppliers will work with us all and local communities in ensuring delivery of the projects in a timely, efficient manner. It is worth reiterating that the HIF funding is no longer reliant on the Banwell or Mendip Spring Garden Village proposals from the Joint Spatial Plan. The funding agreement is clear that future housing numbers and locations beyond this already allocated at Western Village are wholly subject to the local plan process. All infrastructure proposals arising from the HIF, the bypass, school and associated works will be subject to a full due diligence process, including technical assessments, planning consultations and addressing all legislative requirements. This would also include looking in more detail at the impacts of the wider network. The cost of such due diligence is high and is one reason why the HIF funding is required. In relation to the financial risks that may be incurred if there is an overspend, these must be balanced against the risks of not securing the funding at all. Such risks would include the subsequent lack of funding for the secondary school, which would continue to be required at a cost of 30 million to ourselves, and the unmitigated impact of Western Villages on the existing Banwell route, where journey times are forecast to increase from an average 5 to 16 minutes, even without further development. In summary, then, the HIF enables £100 million worth of new investment for critical infrastructure, helps deliver much needed homes for local communities, will have sustainability at its core and across highway, school, housing and master planning, provides a once in a lifetime opportunity for the village of Banwell, giving the village back to the community. Risks, costs and programme challenges known, recognised and managed with robust governance and management mitigation strategies. HIF, part of a suite of major projects, are key to the economic recovery of North Somerset Council and the region, adopting best practice through use of civil engineering and environment quality assessment award schemes and building research establishment environmental assessment method. That's two acronyms which I put out in full. Sustainability assessment methodology, strong communication plan for meaningful and honest engagement. This is the funding opportunity available now. There is no other on the table. Funding of this magnitude will come with risks, but we know what they are and will manage them with integral and external scrutiny and checks and balances in place and through the GDA. Nearly 4,500 homes have consent blocked by the lack of school places, which the council will need to provide without this funding, and any other homes which will be subject to the local plan process. I therefore propose that the Executive, 1, agrees the final grant determination agreement, 2, notes the governance and project management process in place for the execution of the Housing Infrastructure Fund, and I look for a second. And I will take any questions that anybody has.
I'll second that, and James, thank you. So
Thank you.
We now have the debate. Before we get into the debate, I need to ask both executive and non-executive members if anybody wishes to raise any item from the exempt Appendix 4. Because if you do, we'll have to go into exempt session. So does anybody wish to raise anything from Appendix Item 4, the exempt item? Would you put it on the chat, please, so Hazel can let me know?
Nothing has been received, Chairman.
Lovely. So if anybody decides to change their mind, they need to let me know before they speak, because I'll have to take the whole thing into exempt session. Otherwise, I prefer to continue this in perfectly open into transmission to members of the public. So, okay, thank you very much.
Apologies, Chairman. Councillor Caniford has. Oh no, I beg your pardon. He said not item 4. I do apologise.
Right. Thanks, then. Thank you. So on that basis, we'll continue. So are there any officer comments first? James, did any of the officers wish to speak?
I don't know if Jonathan or Alex wishes to speak at this point. They may need to help me answer some of the questions a little later, I expect.
Okay. So let's ask any non-executive members if they've got any comments or questions first.
Yes, we have 3 requests to speak from non-executive members.
Lovely.
Councillor Havison, Councillor Keating and Councillor Hearn.
Okay, so Karen Havison, please.
Okay. Yes, I'd like to share some excitement and some concerns I have over this massive project in my ward. And I have to confess it has caused me sleepless night, because I do not generally support road building, as you may imagine, because new roads do not mitigate traffic and environmental problems in the long term quite frequently. But Banwell is in such a desperate situation that I've overruled my concerns and I am supporting this. It's the largest infrastructure project that will happen in my ward during my time, and probably one of the largest for North Somerset as well. It will have a big impact on our carbon footprint, yet the report does not actually mention our climate emergency declaration. I know we use the term sustainable quite frequently, but it doesn't actually talk about our climate emergency declaration, and I feel this ought to be taken into account. Our draft challenges and choices document, in contrast, do emphasise it. So we need to connect this project to this declaration. We need to make sure that the climate emergency is considered as an absolutely essential element in this project. So more specific things are that the impact on the down the road villages of Sanford and Churchill are not mentioned, and I think this is a bit of an omission, because it's not just affecting Banwell, it will affect those villages further down the road, and we need to incorporate that upfront into the overall plan very firmly. There is also the active travel is not just for Banwell, just the same, but it also should use this opportunity to incorporate cycle paths linking Banwell, Sanford and Churchill along this new route, and especially for school children or students to Churchill Academy. And of course, one of my dreams as an ex-university employee in Langford would be that the Langford site with 400 students and 400 staff would be incorporated in this network, because I know for a fact that there would be huge numbers of students and youngish staff who would cycle to work if they could do it so safely. There's another concern I have, which is quite different. There is a section of the Castle Hill section which actually would have to cut through the AONB, and that does worry me. There doesn't seem to be any way in avoiding this. I know it's the edge of the AONB, but it is actually the AONB. There's also a water extraction protection zone there, so that's a more specific concern I have. So just to summarize, I think this project needs to encourage active travel as much as rerouting cars and take into account the whole area, not just Banwell. Thank you.
I think I might be able to answer that, Chairman. Thank you for that, Karen. Very interesting. I fully agree with everything you say. We are actively working with Nicola Webb, who is the North Somerset Council Climate Emergency Officer, to ensure that sustainability is inherent within our design and the implementation approaches for the Housing Infrastructure Fund. Sustainability is absolutely one of the core objectives of this scheme. With regards to the outlying areas, Whilst the report only mentions Banwell in this regard, this is meant to cover the wider local area, including Sanford and Churchill. We are actively working again with Nicola Webb to ensure that sustainability is inherent within our designs and implementation approaches for HIF. Traffic modelling is one of the aspects of advanced works we would undertake. This will allow us to establish what impacts on the surrounding road networks would be with the bypass in place. Certainly not a foregone conclusion, but if there is adverse traffic conditions created, part of the HIF funding is allocated for the design and implementation of local traffic management and road improvements to help alleviate any impact. With regards to the Castle Hill thing, the preliminary stage of HIF works will undertake detailed assessment of environmental factors to inform the design of the bypass and therefore propose the most appropriate routes, and they will come forward as time goes on. But can I just emphasise on this that this will go through a huge amount of scrutiny all the way through its progress. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, James. Patrick Keating.
Thank you, Chair. I think a lot of what I was going to say and ask has already been reflected by Councillor Havison's comments, but I would like to emphasise the strength of feeling, particularly in Churchill, around the worry around potential negative impacts downstream of the bypass, and the worry that simply solving the problem in Banwell will simply move the bottleneck elsewhere along the road networks. It's very positive to hear Councillor Tonkin saying that will be looked at as this project moves forward, and I think I and certainly others will be looking to scrutinise and push to make sure that that is indeed done, and that we don't simply see a problem passed as a parcel down from one village to the next. I'd also like to welcome the comments of Councillor Tonkin reflecting that the HIF project is not linked or bound to the Garden Villages projects. Again, that's been an area of significant concern for residents in my ward, and it's really positive to see that explicit message that there is no link between the two projects. But again, I think as this process moves forward, I'd like to continue to be assured that any new major developments that are open up as a result of this bypass are subject to the local plan and scrutiny and input by residents and councillors. And I think many of Councillor Tonkin's responses to Councillor Havison's question have covered off the points I want to make, but I just wanted to emphasise that these are real and serious issues and concerns for residents in my area. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Can I just respond to that a minute, Don? Yeah, just one thing to say. Openness and transparency is the key, together with a huge amount of scrutiny. So watch this space. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick.
Sandra Hearn.
Thank you, Chairman. In item 3.6 had a very nice little graph to do with the project management office and what have you. My concern was all, James may have answered part of this, is all of the staff in-house, or is it some of the work split with the companies on the project? Because I wondered if we had sufficient in-house staff to be able to manage not just this project, but all the other big projects that we've got going on at this time.
Right. Thank you for that. I think probably if I asked Jonathan Paris L. Neris to answer that one for me, please. I thought he was on the call.
Find out.
Soon find out.
Jonathan, are you there?
Jonathan, are you lurking?
Chair, I could possibly give an answer to that if.
Okay, Ash.
Sandra, I don't know if you remember, but earlier in the year we took a paper to, I think it's Executive or Council, which included a number of additional posts to substantially expand the project management team within North Somerset, which exactly reflected your concerns that we didn't have enough people in-house to actually manage these projects and expertise to do that. I think, and I know that I can't remember how many posts that were, but that was approved a few months ago. I think recruitment is underway, and I think, James, you would probably support me that we met with one of the, I can't remember who it was now, but is it Jonathan, who's usually recruited?
Jonathan's new.
Yes. Yeah, and he came in and he has very high credentials in terms of managing large projects to work with the existing team.
Thank you for that, Ash.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hazel, are there any other questions?
Jonathan Kirby has said that if Alex Fear and Jonathan aren't on the phone having technical difficulties, he could help out.
I think we've answered it now. Thank you, Hazel. That's
Hazel.
Okay.
So is there anybody else?
So there are executive members wishing to speak.
Lovely.
Councillor Caniford, Councillor Cartman, Councillor Gibbons.
Okay, let's go to Mark Caniford first.
Thank you, Don. Yes, I've actually got a couple of questions and just one observation, but I don't need to really discuss the observation, just that I'm delighted that we are certainly looking very seriously about a possible bottleneck through Sanford and Churchill, simply because as a regular user of that route, you don't want to be stuck in Sanford instead of being stuck in Banwell. So it's really important that we do address that. And I see James really nodding on that one, so I'm really happy about that.
Recycling now, won't you?
Yep, that's it. No motorbike, pedal bike.
Yeah, I won't have to go all the way up the hill. That'll be fine now, you see. Yeah. A couple of questions, and you'll probably have to send this to officers possibly. First of all, the Homes England may require a grant. The grant recipient to appoint a monitoring surveyor. Has that been taken into account in terms of our costs and in terms of any overspend that could occur from that, or have they already done so? And the second one, can I have any just rough details of what public realms work we may be doing in and around Banwell to improve Banwell after they haven't got so much traffic going through it, which will undoubtedly, and as Councillor Housen says, become a really nice village once you got all the cars out of it.
Again, I'm going to have to seek officer advice on both those questions, Mark, because I can't give you an answer just at the moment.
Chairman, Alex here is available to...
Oh, right.
Alex, can you answer, Alex?
Yeah.
On the spot?
Yeah. So in response to the first question, Councillor Caniford, yes, it has been accommodated within the overall budget, the cost of the monitoring officer. In response to the second question, we've made assumptions at the bid stage of what the public realm improvements could look like. So high quality paving, reducing the road widths, etc. But the actual detail will be subject to engagement and consultation with the local community. We want to know what they want and sort of deliver what the community wants, as this is a great opportunity to secure a real benefit. So it's not going to be something that we impose. It's going to be something that we will, as part of our consultation, look to the community to sort of work with us and guide us on what they want to secure and achieve for their local area.
Thank you. Perfect answer, because that's exactly what I wanted to hear. Local members and local residents will effectively lead that piece of work, which is good news. Thank you.
And I think, Mark, what you meant to say was Banwell's a delightful place to live already and will be even more delightful once the road scheme is put in. I think that's what you meant to say, wasn't it?
Well, I've considered moving there several times myself already, but it was just the road that put me off. So maybe I'll be there before long and I'll have a new councillor representing me.
All right. Okay. There's a choice, of course. Ash Cartman.
Just very briefly,
comments about
Banwell. I'm not going to make any comments about Banwell specifically. I'm going to talk about the road, and I just reflect you on Councillor Haverson's comment about not wanting to build roads. I understand that, and this is a very practical decision in that regard. But I was fortunate enough to be invited by Councillor Tonkin in part of the briefings on this, given the amount of money involved, and was very pleasantly surprised at the commitment of the officers and the team to make the impact of the road as neutral as possible, both in terms of the environment around it and also in terms of its carbon footprint, and to actively challenge at a national level some of the providers when we're looking to commission and get this built. So I'm sure there'll be an ongoing dialogue with Nikki and Bridget as well. But I think we could make a real an example project here of how things should be done and lead the way. That's my hope.
And I think as well, Ash, it's worth saying that something from the government announcements yesterday on walking and cycling strategy, that roads aren't only for cars, are they? And we need to maximise the opportunity to provide a route for cyclists, for walkers and for public transport. And the government guidance yesterday is certainly around the walking and cycling, that should take precedence over the car. And I'm sure that applies to public transport as well. And I think it's from an infrastructure point of view, we need to make sure we maximise its use as not purely as more cars. So thank you for that. And let's not forget as well, the scheme also will deliver a much needed secondary school. Vital. Beyond the road. The spend is not just for that one project, the road, essential as it is for the people of Banwell, but also for delivering that school for our future citizens. And Catherine Gibbons, perhaps you want to talk about schools?
No, I wasn't going to directly, actually. You've said it.
I thought I said that so well as well. Yes.
Yeah. No, obviously, I welcome this success criteria, that this should be an exemplar of infrastructure delivery, etc., biodiversity gain, carbon reduction, improved air quality for Banwell. And I think it's one of those instances where this is a road that will make Banwell better. What I wanted to ask for reassurance over was the issue of affordable housing in terms of the houses that are going to be built. I mean, I grew up in a small village and I witnessed that become, in the space of 10 to 15 years, basically a commuter village for London. This was in Sussex, and properties in our village were priced out of the reach of local people. So I just want some reassurance that this development will be offering houses that local people from the local community will be able to live in and afford, and so it can keep a vibrant community going in Banwell and not just become a very nice adjunct to Bristol.
Alex, do you want to answer that one, please?
Yes, of course. So the question will be subject to the local plan process, so not predetermining the outcome of that, but within the document it notes 35% affordable housing as a requirement, and that follows on from the existing developments. There is a mix between social, I'll try and find those percentages, but in essence it's 35%.
It's just that sometimes in the past, and I'm sure things are different now, but developers managed to sort of row back on the amount of affordable houses as the development proceeded, and I just wanted to make sure we're not going to allow that to happen again. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's up to us to make sure it doesn't, Catherine, isn't it? So we don't want to be fobbed off by certain interest groups, shall we say?
Well, that'll all be part and parcel of the planning process.
Lovely.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Hazel, has anybody else indicated they wish to speak?
No further request to speak, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, colleagues, for the debate. We have, excuse me just for a moment, we have two recommendations that I was going to take on block. We've had proposed and seconder. Is there anybody who wants to vote against?
Nothing in chat, Chairman.
Any abstentions?
Nothing in chat, Chairman.
Okay, so I take it unanimously, colleagues, you are supporting the two recommendations. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, colleagues, for your help in terms of the exempt items. We're able to debate this fully in front of members of the public, which is really useful. Thank you very much from a transparency point of view. So, according to my papers, we are now finished the business on the agenda. I would like to, before I declare the meeting closed, I would like to thank all the support team here who've been doing the minutes and doing the master of ceremonies and also doing the recording. So thank you all, team. It's very much appreciated. Thank you, colleagues, non-executive colleagues, for tuning in, and also thank you to my colleagues on the executive, and most of all, my thanks to members of the public from North Somerset and possibly beyond for watching us today. So thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you.